The fluorescent light above me was too bright and wrong somehow, the kind of white that has no warmth in it at all. My mouth tasted like metal and something medicinal underneath, and for a few seconds after I opened my eyes, I genuinely didn't know where I was or how I'd gotten there. Then I moved, and my body answered the question for me. The pain came from my lower right side, a deep pulling ache that told me something had been removed from somewhere it had been before. The IV in my arm tugged when I shifted. A soft alarm peeped twice before settling. I was in a hospital room somewhere in Mississauga, and I'd been there for just over 18 hours, most of them unconscious. My name is Meredith. I'm 31 years old, and 3 days before my appendix quietly tried to kill me, I was given the most important thing my grandmother ever owned. My grandmother passed in early February, a Thursday morning, in a long-term care facility in Brampton where she'd spent her final 2 years. She was 83 and sharp until almost the very end, the kind of woman who remembered every birthday and every slight with equal precision. She'd come to Canada from Trinidad with my grandfather in 1971 and had spent 60 years building something from almost nothing. A house in Etobicoke, a small sewing business, a family she held together through sheer force of personality and very strong tea. She left me her necklace. It wasn't a surprise exactly. She'd told me years before that it would come to me. A vintage piece, Art Deco, white gold set with a central oval diamond surrounded by seed pearls. She'd received it from my grandfather on their 20th anniversary in 1983 and worn it to every important occasion after that. When we'd had it appraised for insurance purposes, the jeweler in Oakville put it at $16,500. But that number was almost meaningless to me. It was her necklace. I could still smell her perfume on the chain when it first came into my hands. I'd been wearing it the night I collapsed. My partner's name is Fletcher, and we've been together 4 years. We were at his cousin's engagement dinner when I felt a pain in my side that I told myself was nothing, then told myself was probably something, then couldn't pretend was anything other than an emergency. Fletcher drove me to the nearest ER. 2 hours later, I was in surgery. My mother was at the hospital before I even came out of the anesthetic. When I woke up properly, the real waking up, the one where I could form sentences, she was already there, sitting by the window with a coffee from the Tim Hortons downstairs, scrolling through her phone with the particular focused vacancy of someone who doesn't want to have a conversation, but also doesn't want to leave. I was glad she was there. I want to be honest about that, even now. I reached up instinctively to my collarbone. The necklace wasn't there. I told myself this was normal. They take jewelry off during surgery. There was probably a bag somewhere or a safe. I pressed the call button. The nurse who came in checked my chart, checked the small labeled bag hanging from the bed rail. Hospital, bracelet, earrings, my phone in a plastic sleeve. No necklace. Sometimes family members hold personal items for safekeeping during a procedure, she said. Do you have someone with you? I looked at my mother. My mother is not a woman who avoids things. She has an opinion about everything, usually delivered at full volume, and she has never once in her life been caught without something to say. She once argued with a referee at my brother's house league basketball game in 2009 and somehow won. She will tell you exactly what she thinks of your choices, your haircut, your partner, and your decision to drive the 427 during rush hour. She was staring at the window like it had personally offended her. Mom, I said. My voice came out rougher than I expected. Where's the necklace? She set her coffee down with a kind of careful deliberateness I recognized immediately. It was the same motion she made when she was buying herself time. You should be resting, she said. You had surgery last night, Mur. You don't need to worry about jewelry right now. Mom. Wait, where is it? That's when I saw the thing she does when she's caught, not when she's sorry. Her chin went up slightly, and she pulled her cardigan closed across her chest, and she looked at me with an expression that wasn't guilt so much as bracing. Preparation. Your father and I needed to cover something, she said. We were going to tell you after you were feeling better. I still didn't understand. I think I genuinely didn't. There was a consignment buyer in Burlington, she said, her voice settling into the careful register she used for delivering bad news. We'd had it appraised. We used some of what we got to handle a few things for your brother's celebration. My brother is turning 30 next month. For the better part of a year, he'd been planning a party. Not a house party, not a backyard barbecue, but an event. A venue in downtown Toronto with a cocktail hour, a DJ, custom centerpieces, a catered dinner for 80 people. My parents had been quietly stressed about the cost of it for months. I'd heard the tension in my father's voice. I'd noticed my mother starting to do the thing where she doesn't mention money, but keeps mentioning how tired she is. I still hadn't connected those facts to what she was telling me now. "You sold Grandma's necklace," I said slowly, "to pay for his party." "Not entirely," she said quickly. "There were other expenses. But the venue deposit, there was a deadline, and we didn't have liquid cash, and the necklace was just. It was around my neck, Mum. 3 nights ago, it was around my neck." My voice had gone very quiet. I've noticed over the years that I get quieter when I'm most upset, not louder. My mother gets louder. My brother gets louder. I go still in a way that people sometimes mistake for calm. It wasn't calm. "It's not just jewelry," I said. "Grandma left it to me specifically. It was in her will. She chose me." "It was an asset," my mother said, and I think she believed that. Genuinely, in the way people believe things that are convenient for them to believe. "We'll replace it. We'll pay you back, Mur." I asked her to leave. I said it quietly without looking at her, and after a moment she went. Fletcher arrived an hour later with takeout from the Vietnamese place near our apartment, because the hospital food had made me gag the day before, and he took one look at me, not at my face exactly, but at the way I was holding my hands in my lap, very still, very controlled. He set the bag down without saying anything first. "They sold the necklace," I said. He sat beside me. He put his hand over mine. "For the party," I added, "for my brother's 30th. Fletcher has a particular quality I've always loved. He doesn't perform emotions. He doesn't make speeches. He sat there with his hand over mine for maybe 30 seconds, and then he said, very evenly, 'How much did they get for it?' It wasn't really a question. I want to tell you something about my family, because the necklace isn't really the beginning of this story. It's just the moment I finally saw the pattern clearly, all at once, without the usual softening that comes from living inside something so long you can't see its shape anymore. My brother is 2.5 years younger than me. He's always been the one my parents worried about more, celebrated louder, arranged their lives around with less hesitation. I don't think they decided to do this. I think it started early and then became the shape of our family before anyone thought to question it. He struggled in school. I didn't. He needed extra support. I didn't. He needed to be pushed, encouraged, driven to practice and tutored, and talked through every major decision. I was the one who figured things out on her own. And somewhere along the way, figures things out on her own, quietly became doesn't need to be considered. When I got into the concurrent education program at Queen's, competitive enough that my high school guidance counselor actually teared up when she called to tell me, my parents took me to East Side Mario's and told me they were proud. Then my father spent most of dinner discussing whether my brother should try the trades or attempt college. I sat there eating breadsticks and listening, telling myself it was fine. Because what else do you do? When I paid off my OSAP in full, 2 years after graduating, my mother's response was, "That's great, hon. Don't mention it around your brother. It makes him feel behind." When I found a genuinely good apartment near the Confederation GO station, my father's first question was whether there was another unit in the building, because my brother had been having trouble with his landlord, and it would be nice for him to have family nearby. My brother is not a bad person. I want to be clear about that, because this story could be told as though he is, and it would be easier in some ways. He's funny and warm, and he can fix anything mechanical, and he has never, to my knowledge, deliberately tried to take anything from me. He was just taught, quietly and consistently, that his needs came first. And since no one ever told him otherwise, he never developed the instinct to question it. I was lying in a hospital bed in Mississauga, with a surgical drain and a scar on my abdomen, and the money from my grandmother's necklace was probably already sitting in a venue's account somewhere in Liberty Village. Fletcher left that evening. I assumed he'd gone home. He hadn't. My mother had mentioned Burlington in passing, almost accidentally, and Fletcher is not a man who lets things go once he's picked them up. He found the consignment shop online, a place called Hartfield Fine Resale, the kind of establishment with a tasteful sign and a locked display case and a woman behind the counter who was professional and careful about what she confirmed. He described the necklace. Art Deco setting, white gold, oval diamond, seed pearl surround, a small engraving on the clasp, my grandmother's initials and the anniversary year, worn almost to nothing but still there if you knew where to look. The woman's expression changed when he mentioned the engraving. She said she'd seen a piece like that recently. She said it hadn't been sold. The consignment window was still open. Fletcher drove home that night, sat at our kitchen table, and looked at our savings account for a while. We'd been putting money aside for a trip to Portugal. 2 years of careful saving, a real trip, not a long weekend, the kind with a rented apartment near the Douro and no schedule to keep. It wasn't a fortune, but it was ours. He transferred what he needed, and went back to Hartfield the next morning, before I was awake. He didn't tell me any of this until it was already done. In the meantime, I'd been discharged and moved temporarily to my parents' house in Etobicoke. Our building had no elevator, and the stairs weren't an option yet, and my parents had a main-floor bedroom sitting empty since my aunt had moved out 3 years before. My mother seemed to interpret my presence there as forgiveness, or at least as moving on. She was already deep in party planning by then. I would hear her on the phone with the caterer discussing appetizer selections. I heard her and my father debate whether the DJ needed overtime, whether the photo booth rental was worth the extra cost, whether $80 favor bags crossed a line or just crossed into tasteful. Not once did anyone knock on the bedroom door to ask how my incision was healing. Not once did my father ask whether I needed anything from the pharmacy. My brother texted me once, a photo of potential table centerpiece arrangements with a question mark, and I sat looking at my phone for a long time trying to figure out what to say to that. I called my friend Lenora instead. Lenora and I have known each other since first year at Queen's, where we were in the same seminar, and bonded over the fact that we were both commuting from home, and both too stubborn to admit we were exhausted. She works in legal aid now, family and civil matters, and she has a gift for taking a situation that feels impossible and describing it in the flattest, most factual terms until you can see exactly what it is. We met for coffee at a place near her office in Brampton. She drove because I wasn't cleared yet, and I laid everything out, the necklace, the will, the consignment sale, the party, the timing of all of it. She stirred her oat latte for a long moment. In Ontario, she said carefully, when a specific item is bequeathed to an individual in a valid will, it belongs to that person, not to the estate generally, not to family members jointly, to the named person. If someone takes that item and converts it for their own use without the owner's consent, that's civil conversion. In plain terms, it's theft. It doesn't matter that they're your parents. I sat with that word for a long time. I'm not trying to press charges, I said. They're my parents. I know, she said, but you deserve to understand what your options are, and you deserve to know that what they did wasn't just hurtful. It was legally wrong. What you do with that is entirely your call. We started meeting weekly after that, not to build a lawsuit exactly, more to build a record. A clear, dated timeline. Copies of my grandmother's will, the specific bequest, the original valuation letter from the Oakville jeweler, a written account of the hospital conversation with my mother, drafted while it was still fresh enough to be credible. Documentation from the consignment sale that Lenora helped me request through proper channels. Through all of it, I kept going to the party planning dinners. I smiled. I offered opinions on centerpiece flowers. I told my mother the menu sounded wonderful. She started to relax around me. My father stopped looking slightly to the left of my face when he talked. They believed, I think, that I had done what I always did, absorbed it, filed it away, moved forward quietly. Fletcher came to find me on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks into my recovery. He asked me to sit at our kitchen table. He didn't make a speech. He just placed a small black velvet pouch on the table and pushed it toward me. I opened it. The necklace lay in my palm exactly as I remembered, the white gold, the oval diamond, the seed pearls, everyone still in place, the clasp with my grandmother's initials, worn almost smooth. I couldn't speak. You didn't have to do that, I finally said, and my voice broke on the last word. I know, he said, but some things don't have a price, and I needed you to know that at least one person in your life understands that. I held it for a long time without putting it on. And somewhere in the middle of sitting there in our kitchen with the necklace in my hands, and Fletcher's hand on my shoulder, I made a decision that had been building in me for weeks without quite having a shape until that moment. I was going to my brother's party. Not to cause a scene in the obvious sense, not to scream or throw something or make myself a story anyone would want to repeat. That's not who I am, and it's not how I wanted any of this to happen. But I had spent my entire life being the quiet one. The capable one. The one who absorbed things and kept moving and never made anyone feel uncomfortable about how they treated her. I was 31 years old. I'd had emergency surgery and recovered in a spare bedroom while my parents planned cocktail menus. I was done being quiet. Lenora helped me put together a formal document, a restitution request, clear and unemotional, outlining what had been taken, its assessed legal value, and what I was asking for going forward. We had it couriered to my parents' address on the evening of the party, time to arrive approximately 2 hours into the event, when things would be in full swing. The night of the party, I wore a dark wrap dress and my grandmother's necklace. I had my hair done properly for the first time since the surgery. I brought my brother a birthday gift, a framed photo of the two of us with our grandmother, Christmas 2019, professionally matted and framed. I meant it. I want to be clear about that. None of my feelings about my parents changed what I felt for our grandmother, or what I genuinely wished for my brother's life. The venue was a rooftop space in Liberty Village, exposed brick, warm Edison bulbs, a DJ setting up in the corner, a long table of elaborately garnished cocktails near the entrance. My parents were at the door when I arrived, and both of them lit up when they saw me, with the particular relieved brightness of people who'd been anxious I might not come. I hugged my brother. He held on a little longer than usual. The evening moved the way those evenings do. I mingled. I chatted with people I hadn't seen in months. I accepted compliments about the dress and deflected questions about the surgery. My father's older sister, who'd driven down from Barrie, and who has never once in her life been able to leave well enough alone, God bless her, found me near the drinks and held my face in both her hands and said, "You look thin, are you eating?" which is the most aunt thing that has ever been said to me. Around 9:30, I saw my father's face change. He'd stepped toward the entrance to greet what he assumed was a late arrival, and found instead a courier with a clipboard and an envelope with his name on it. He signed for it with the pen from his jacket pocket, still mid-smile from a conversation with an old golf buddy, and opened it right there in the entryway with a dozen guests drifting in and out behind him. I watched him read. His face moved through confusion, then recognition, then a specific pale color I had seen once before, the night he'd backed the car into the garden fence and had to tell my mother. He tried to refold it quickly, but his sister was closer than he'd realized, and she had already caught the letterhead. Hartfield Fine Resale printed clearly across the top, and she had already had 2 glasses of Prosecco and was not, at that precise moment, possessed of any particular interest in staying quiet. "Clifton," she said, using his full name the way only his family does, the tone that means she's already suspicious and wants it confirmed out loud. "What is that? What happened?" "Nothing," he said. "I'll deal with it later." "Is that from a jewelry resale shop?" She looked at him. She looked at my mother, who had appeared at his elbow with an expression I recognized as panic wearing the mask of composure. She looked at me, standing calmly near the drinks table, with my grandmother's necklace catching the light under the Edison bulbs. "Clifton," she said again, quieter now, "please tell me that's not what I think it is." Nobody answered her. Nobody needed to. The party didn't end immediately. People are polite at events, and the music kept playing, and most guests had no idea what had just surfaced, but it changed shape entirely. Guests near the entrance drifted toward the edges, pretending not to listen while listening carefully, the way people do at every family gathering when something real finally breaks through the surface. My parents pulled me into the side corridor near the service entrance, my mother moving quickly, my father moving heavily, both of them wearing the expression of people who wanted this to happen somewhere private, about 20 minutes ago. "Why here?" my mother said, her voice low and tight. "Why tonight, on your brother's birthday?" "I waited 8 weeks," I said, and my voice didn't shake the way it used to when I confronted them. "I waited through 2 planning dinners. I waited while you booked the DJ for an extra set and debated whether the shrimp cocktail was worth the upcharge. I waited while you talked to the caterer on the phone for 45 minutes, without once asking how my incision was healing." My father opened his mouth. "I'm not finished," I said. He closed it. "I'm not doing this to ruin the party. I'm doing it because the only time this family notices me is when I make them. I've spent my entire life making it easy for you to forget I exist. I got into a competitive university program and you talked about his math tutor at dinner. I paid off my OSAP and you asked me not to mention it because it would make him feel behind. I had emergency surgery, alone at night, and you were here deciding between a photo booth and a caricature artist." My mother started to say she'd come the next morning. "I know you came," I said. "And I was glad, but that's not the same as what I'm talking about. and you know it." My brother appeared in the doorway then. He was still holding his drink, his jacket slightly crooked, looking younger than 30 between his party and whatever this had become. He looked at the necklace. "I saw it," he said. "When it came in, I saw it in Mum's bag and I knew it was Grandma's. I asked, and Mum told me not to worry about it." He paused. "I should have called you. I should have said something to you, Mer. I'm sorry. I actually am." It wasn't an elaborate apology, but it was honest, and my brother has never been a good liar. What I saw on his face in that doorway was genuine discomfort, someone who had chosen the easier thing and wasn't proud of it. My father tried once more to explain, something about family, about good intentions, about how he'd never imagined it would come to this. I let him finish. "Dad," I said, "you can pay me back every cent and it still won't fix what's underneath this. What's underneath is that I have never been first in this family, not for a single day, not at my convocation, not when I got my job, not when I had surgery, and I can't keep showing up and pretending that's acceptable." I let the silence sit. "Until that changes," I said, "I need some distance. Not out of anger, I am angry, but that's not the reason. The reason is self-respect. I can't keep spending energy on relationships that only run one direction." I walked back into the party, said goodbye to my aunt, who squeezed my hand with both of hers and held on a moment longer than necessary. I said happy birthday to my brother one more time and meant it. Then I went home to our apartment to Fletcher, who had left the lamp on and fallen asleep on the couch with his book open on his chest. And I sat in the armchair across from him and watched him breathe for a while before I woke him up. The weeks after that weren't simple. Real things never are. My father called 4 days later. He didn't make any speeches. He said he'd been thinking, that he knew I was right. Not just about the necklace but about the long version of it, the years of it. He asked if he could come and talk. He showed up on a Saturday morning with a check for the full assessed value and a bag of butter tarts from the Portuguese bakery near their house. He sat at our kitchen table for 2 hours. He asked about my recovery, actually asked and listened to the answer. It wasn't enough to undo 20 years, but it was real. My mother's apology came harder and arrived in pieces, each one wrapped in a little residual logic about how the deposit had already been paid, and she'd always meant to make it right. She wasn't wrong about any of those individual facts. She was just wrong about what they added up to. I accepted what she gave me and held space for the rest of it to come in its own time. Healing isn't one conversation. It's a long series of small choices, and those choices belong to everyone involved. My brother called me on a random Wednesday evening. No occasion, no reason. We talked for almost an hour about nothing important. His job, a podcast we'd both been listening to, the fact that winter had come early and neither of us was prepared for it. Before he hung up, he said, "I want to get better at noticing things. I don't always know how, but I want to." I told him I'd let him know when I needed something. He said okay. We're figuring it out, both of us. Fletcher and I rebooked Portugal for September. We haven't chosen the apartment yet, but we found a slow train route along the coast that we both like, and that feels like enough for now. The necklace is back where it belongs. I wear it on days that feel important and some days that don't, because my grandmother wore it the same way. Sometimes I look down at it in the afternoon light and think about everything it survived. 60 years of a marriage, a house in Etobicoke and emergency surgery, a consignment shop in Burlington, and the long, imperfect work of a family slowly learning to see all of its members clearly. It survived all of that, so did I. If you're still here, thank you for watching this one through to the end. Tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from today. I love seeing where people are watching from across the country. And if you've ever been the capable one, the quiet one, the one your family expected to just be fine, I see you. Leave me a comment and I'll see you in the next story.